Hello YouTube, Mr. Mags here. The Pokemon Trainer Red fight at the end of the Gen 2 games and the remakes is one of my all-time favorite fights in the entire Pokemon franchise. I just really love the idea of fighting the protagonist from the previous Pokemon game with what could be considered their canon team from those games. I really love that idea, and I really do wish they had continued that trend with at least some of the protagonists going forward, but unfortunately, they never did. So I thought it would be fun if today I present to you what I believe could be canon teams for every single protagonist. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my presentation on what I believe would be the canon teams for every single Pokemon protagonist. Okay, let's get right into the presentation here. Starting off with some criteria of how I am building these teams. First, the Pokemon that will be considered for these teams will be any static encounters that are in any given Pokemon game. For example, the Snorlaxes in Red and Blue, any various like Electrodes, that kind of thing. Gift Pokemon like the Lapras from Silphco, prize Pokemon. I kind of threw in there to be like the Pokemon that you can get from the Celadon Game Corner, any Pokemon that are given out as rewards for completing side quests, that kind of thing. Legendaries, the player is forced to catch after a certain point, and I believe Gen 5 onwards, you're essentially forced to catch a legendary in order to progress in the story. And I figured if you're forced to catch it, then that should be on their team. But if they're not forced to catch it, then it's not guaranteed that a player would catch that Pokemon. In-game trade Pokemon. This will kind of be a last resort since not every single player will seek out those trade Pokemon. But if I have to include those, then I will. And those will be a case by case basis. And any other Pokemon that could be considered a universal experience for all players. Next, teams will be made for every male and female player character with no repeated Pokemon within any given region. Now, this was a little tricky at first. I considered just doing, just one protagonist per generation, but I got my creative juices flowing so much so that I ended up making teams for every single protagonist. And lastly, the trainers will be assumed to be from the games with the most expansive list of options. May will be from Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, Dawn will be from Platinum, etc. There's a couple of instances where I fudge this a little bit, like for example, the player characters from Ultra Sun and Moon might have one or two Pokemon that are only in Sun and Moon, but again, I was kind of do it by case basis and explain it as I go. But I feel that to be justified since it's a representation of the entire generation. Okay, so starting off with the original protagonist, Pokemon Trainer Red. So, like I said, I made a team for every single protagonist, both male and female. So, I made this entire presentation. I made one for Red, I made one for Leaf from Leaf Green Fire Red. And I was happy with those two teams kind of in parallel to each other. But when I was making those teams, I specifically wanted to challenge myself to make both of those teams and not include any of the Pokemon that Red from either Gen 2 or Heart Gold Soul Silver had, just to add some variety. But after making this entire presentation, I realized that didn't really feel quite right. So Red is the one trainer that I ended up making two teams for. His first team is essentially what he would have if he were in Red and Blue, and then the next one is if he was in Fire Red. So his Red and Blue team would be Jolteon, Snorlax, Lapras, Hitmonlee, Aerodactyl, Charizard. I feel a lot of these are pretty straightforward. Jolteon comes from the Eevee that you can get in Celadon. Snorlax is the static encounter Snorlax. Lapras is gift from Silphco. Hitmonlee, you can get either that or Hitmonchan at the Fighting Dojo. Aerodactyl, you revive the old Amber, and then Charizard as a starter. Um, Something I'll go ahead and say here is that unless stated otherwise, I will essentially be doing this as if the male protagonist is the most canon protagonist, because I firmly believe that Blue should have a Snorlax, or sorry, Blastoise, sorry, a Blastoise when we fight him in the champion fight. So Red should have a Charizard to accommodate that. And again, unless stated otherwise, just assume that the rival will have the corresponding starter based on the starter that the male trainer has. So this is his team if you were in Pokemon Red and Blue. But then if you were in Fire Red, this is the original team I created, trying not to use Snorlax or Lapras just to just to make things a little more interesting. So Gyarados, the Magikarp, you can pay $500 for. Kabutops, one of the fossils you can revive. Scyther, this is the instance where the prize Pokemon included Pokemon found in game corners. Since a player character spends so much time in the Celadon game corner fighting Team Rocket, who have their base there, I figured it makes enough sense that it could be considered a universal experience that any player would at least spend a little bit of time in the game corner, and they could theoretically feasibly have a Scyther. Hitmonlee, once again, the Pokemon they chose from the Fighting Dojo. Mr. Mime, this is the first trade Pokemon on this in this presentation. And I also really like this again because in the Celadon Game Corner, you can buy an Abra, so you can trade it for Mr. Mime. That won't be the case for all of them, but I do really like that synergy there. And then once again, Charizard. Moving on to Leaf, the protagonist of Leaf Green. She has Jolteon. This could also be a Flareon or a Vaporeon. I mean, I wasn't really picky. I just kind of just picked one. But I do, for some reason in my head, Jolteon seems to fit here the best. Maybe you could argue Flareon so she can have a fire, grass, water type, but it's not a huge deal to me. Omastar, the other fossil Pokemon, to kind of coincide with Red's Kabutops. Clefable, another Game Corner Pokemon. You can get Clefairy in the Game Corner, so she can have Clefable. Hitmonchan, the other one that from the Fighting Dojo. Jinx, another trade Pokemon, and I like the idea of them both having a trade Pokemon that is a psychic type. I just again like that synergy there. And then Venusaur, because she's from Pokemon Leaf. All right, moving on to Generation 2, we have Ethan. Steelix, I really like the idea of him having Steelix because there's actually two different places where you can trade for a Steelix in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. There is the Onyx named Rocky that you can trade a Bellsprout for in Violet City in order for you to have an Onyx to fight both Falkner and then Bugsy, and it's also good defensively into Whitney. So that's just a good, strong Pokemon to have that early in the game. Or in the post game of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you have the opportunity to trade any Pokemon for a Steelix from Jasmine. So if, for whatever reason, the trainer didn't get Rocky, they have another opportunity to get Steelix at a later point. So them having Steelix in Heart Gold and Soul Silver just feels almost very, it feels like something they should have. The Sudowoodo, much like the Snorlax, is like a roadblock Pokemon that I feel like they would have. Umbreon, the gift Eevee you get from Bill. The shiny Gyarados, unfortunately, the program I used to make these teams didn't have the option to put shiny Pokemon in, so it is the shiny Gyarados from the Lake of Rage. Hitmontop you get from the fighting master guy from Mount Mortar. And then his Canon starter, I believe, to be Typhlosion, because I firmly believe Silver's Canon starter would be Feraligatr. And when making these lists, I wasn't originally gonna do Ethan, Lyra, and Chris from Crystal, but after looking at all the options, I realized there is enough to make full teams without repeats for all of them. So next we have Chris from Crystal. Togetic, I kind of flip flop between giving her or Lyra Togetic because Lyra would obviously have Togekiss since she's from Gen 4, but there's going to be at least one other Togekiss on this list. And also in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it's actually really hard to find a shiny stone. So it just felt more in the spirit of the original games to give her Togetic. Shuckle, you get from that guy in Seawood City, and because he originally had Sneasel, but your rival took that, so you get Shuckle. Espeon to kind of coincide with Ethan's Umbreon. Electrode, this is actually another fun one because there's like his Steelix, there's actually two different places to get either Voltorb or Electrode. In Olivine City, for whatever reason, you can trade for a Voltorb. I don't remember what Pokemon, maybe a Krabby or something. But Voltorb was definitely not really useful at that point in the game, unlike Rocky was in the first for the first three gyms. Voltorb doesn't really help you that much for the rest of the game, but it's still it's still a fun trade Pokemon. And then in the Mahogany Rocket hideout, there's a place where you have to fight three Electrode in order to stop the generator, and she could easily catch one of those Electrodes. So there's at least two different places to get an Electrode. It has to be on this list, I feel. And Dragonite that knows extreme speed. I originally had given that to Ethan, but I figured that because the Dratini from the Dragon's Den that first happened in Crystal, I wanted to give that to her. And for Alligator. Now, Lyra, this one is actually interesting because this is the one time that I bucked the trend of going slightly off course of the original criteria I gave, because Lyra, I believe, is the only player character that already has a specific canon Pokemon. Again, assuming Ethan is the most canon player character, Lyra would have a canon Azumarill. The first Pokemon you see in the entire game, once you actually have access to actually playing, is the Marill that bumps into you. That is Lyra's Marill. So it makes perfect sense that she would evolve that into an Azumarill if you're actually, if she had a canon team. I originally was like kind of wishy-washy on if she should have that, and like maybe it should be Vaporeon to coincide with the other two having an evolution, or maybe the Lapras from Union Cave. But I feel really good about her having a Azumarill. And then she has the Firo Kenya that you get from that one uh, uh, guard guy that he wants you to give it to that other guy that over there east of Violet City. Then he decides he doesn't want it anymore, so he gives you a TM for your trouble. It's a fun little side quest, but you do get to keep the Sphero whether or not you actually complete the quest. So that's that one. And then the top three, Quagsire, Ampharos, Cargo. There is an NPC named Primo, I believe, in the Violet City Pokemon Center, where he will give you three different eggs depending on a code that you put in there. You tell him a specific phrase, and he'll give you a Quagsire, Ampharos, and or Cargo egg, depending on the phrase you tell him. I believe you can get all three per save file. I could be wrong about that, but regardless, I think it'll be fun if she did, if she did use all three of these. And then Meganium. Okay, next up we have Brendan. Brendan specifically from Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. So he has Hariyama, the Makuhita that you can trade a slack off for in Rustboro City, named Mackett. Armaldo, one of the fossils that you get from the desert. Kecleon, similar to Snorlax, it's it's a Pokemon that blocks your way, but also there's like at least six different Kecleon there around Fortree City that if you somehow knock out that first one, you have access to egg Kecleon somewhere around there. So it makes perfect sense that he would catch a Kecleon at some point. Metagross, you get a Beldum from Steven after you beat the game. Latios, you're actually just forced to take this Latios with you after doing that little side quest with Steven. Once you first get Surf and start going towards Fortree, you're forced to have this Latios, and then his Mega Sceptile. I kind of flip flop between whether or not I wanted Sceptile or Latios to be Mega, but I like Mega Sceptile, the design a lot better. Same with Mega Blaziken. I like it better than Mega Latios. So plus it makes sense for their Mega to be their starter Pokemon. Speaking of May, we have May here. And this one, I actually had a couple of different options I could have given her. Um, Originally, I had cast form on Brendan's team instead of the Hariyama, and then I gave her a Togekiss since the lady that gives you the Why Not egg can later in the post game give you a Togepi egg. But I figured in general, even if it's a trade evolution or trade Pokemon, I'll be prioritizing Pokemon from their generation first. So even though generally I'll only use trade Pokemon as last resorts, because Hariyama is a Gen 3 Pokemon, I'm prioritizing that on Brendan's team and cast from here as opposed to giving her that Togekiss. But I do want her to have the Wobbuffet, Cradily be the other fossil, cast form you get from the Weather Institute. That Pikachu is very funny because in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, once you do your first contest, you're given a Pikachu, either the Pop Star form or the Rock Star form, depending on the gender. And again, I kind of thought about giving Brendan the Rock Star one, but it just May is definitely more. If maybe I'm just going off the anime here, but she's definitely more of the contest doer. So she should definitely have this Pikachu, Latias, and Mega Blaziken. Next up, Lucas. Lucas and Don, their teams were definitely the easiest to make. I've had their teams crafted more or less set in stone for like the past 3 years. There's just so many different options for Gen 4 Platinum gift and static encounters. There's so many that just their teams just fell together so easily. Lucario, the egg you get from Riley. Spiritomb, the odd keystone after everything you do in the underground. Porygon Z, you get a Porygon from a person in Veilstone City. Glaceon, the Eevee you get from Bebe. Rampardos, one of the fossils, and then Torterra. Like maybe Leafeon fits him better, but I wanted him to have Torterra since I felt that Barry has Infernape. So I'm not gonna like care that much about type overlap overall, but I think it's fine for him to have Glaceon. Like either one, it doesn't really matter. But just in this instance, just for type variety, I'm giving him Glaceon. And then for Dawn, the Togepi egg that Cynthia gives you, evolving to Togekiss. Drifblim, the Drifloon there by the Valley Windworks that evolves into Drifblim. Blissey, the Happiny egg that the one hiker guy gives you in Hearthome. Leafeon, Bastiodon, and Polion. This team I really like aesthetically how this team is just a bunch of really bulky, big, bulky guys. Togepi, Drifloon, Blissey, Bastiodon just have either a lot of HP or defense, and this would be a very hard team to take down. Even Leafeon has a lot of defense for some reason. So I don't know. I just like the idea of her having just a big, beefy, hard to take down team. And I did kind of consider, because Brendan or Lucas and Don do technically have teams that they use in Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. I considered, making alternate teams based on like the Pokemon I like best from those teams, but the point is that this is, if if the player is doing a playthrough team, these are the Pokemon that that you would come across. The only exception I gave was Lyra, and even then, to substitute Azumarill for Vaporeon or Lapras if you would rather that happen. But yeah, I feel like this team for Dawn just fits her very well. Hilbert. Now, I kind of mentioned how at first I was a little iffy about if I wanted to do one for both the male and female protagonists for every single Pokemon game. And this was the first big hurdle that I had to like where I had to make that choice of, do I want to do it for every single protagonist? Because Gen 5 and even Gen 6 don't have that many options. Like 5, 6, and really 8, I had to kind of fudge some things a little bit in order to make every single protagonist have a team. But I hunkered down. I was able to make both of them have Hilbert and Hilda both have good teams, and by the end, I actually am very proud of the teams I created here. So for Hilbert, he has Semi-Seer, that one lady gives you the monkey that is good into the first gym leader's monkey that is good into the starter Pokemon that you picked. So because he picked Samurott, he will have Semi-Seer. Archeops, one of the two fossils you could pick. Zenmo Darmanitan. This is a static encounter. There's near castle in the desert. There's a bunch of like Darmanitan statues. You feed it a ranged candy bar, and it fights you as a Darmanitan Zen form. And I figured since he also has Volcarona, clearly he spends a lot of time around the relic castle or whatever it's called. So he should have that Zenmo Darmanitan. And funnily enough, it would actually make perfect sense for either Hilbert to have two Volcarona or both Hilbert and Hilda to both have a Volcarona, because not only is there's a static encounter Volcarona, there's also a Larvesta egg that you can get. So in theory, it's very feasible for any player to have two Volcaronas. Granted, you're probably not really going to be able to evolve that Larvesta anytime soon because it evolves on 59, well, after the Elite Four cap, but still, assuming you play past that, you easily could have at least two Volcaronas. And then the Zekrom that you're forced to catch, and then Samurott. For Hilda, Semi-Sage, for the same reason he has Semi-Seer, because she has, I feel like she should have Imbor. Caracosta, this Emolga is very fun because I believe it's in Twist Mountain. There is a trade where you trade a guy a Boldor and he trades you an Emolga. And then in Black and White 2, if you trade that guy back in Emolga, he'll trade you a Gigalith, implying that it's the same Boldor that you traded and it evolved and then he trades it back. I think that's a lot of fun. And then that will come up in just a little bit as well. Musharna, in the basement of the Dream Yard, there is a static Musharna, I believe, in the post game that you can have access to. Reshiram, and then Imbor. So part of the problem I was running into with both Hilda and Hilbert building their teams is, regardless of what you did, one of them had to have 3 fire types. The only way it wouldn't work is if he had superior and semi-poor, and I didn't want him to have superior. So in order for him both their starters to be canon, one of them had to have 3 fire types. Either, because we're working with Darmanitan, Semi-Seer, Volcarona, and Imbor and Reshiram, there's 5 there's 5 fire types going on. So like it was a little tricky for me to justify giving someone 5 or 3 different fire types, but this is when I realized the team composition doesn't really matter as much, especially since playthrough teams, you can have a team full of 6 fire types and you'll be just fine. The player can generally figure it out. Even if there is a major water trainer, which there actually isn't in base Gen 5, any given player character with enough effort can deal with it. So I really do like these teams I ended up with. But we're not done with Gen 5. We have Nate. So there's a lot of protagonists, especially after Gen 5, that I not that I didn't know they had names, but I couldn't even like begin to guess what their names were, especially the Gen 7 kids. Couldn't even begin to guess what their names are, but his name is Nate, apparently. Mandibuzz, we're assuming that he is playing Pokemon Black. He has Mandibuzz uh, in the route between uh, Castelia and Nimbasa City, I believe what they're called. There's like a new route where in one game you can find a static Mandibuzz, and the other game is a static Braviary, both with their hidden abilities, which I think is a lot of fun. And it's also just pretty much the only viable way to use Mandibuzz or Braviary in Gen 5, considering we're only in any Pokemon game, because they evolve at so late, like after 50, it's either 52 or 54. So I do appreciate them having you at least have the option to find them earlier. The Gigalith I mentioned earlier, being the one that he traded Emolga for, essentially for the Gigalith that Hilbert or Hilda traded in black or white, whichever she's from. Black, yeah. Uh, Jellicent. Um, this one's kind of funny because in black it's a Jellicent male, and then in white it's the Jellicent female. And really, the only reason that he has Jellicent is because this program doesn't have a graphic for Jellicent female, but it doesn't really matter which one has it. But I do kind of like Jellicent male here on his team. Plus, her team came together so easily, or the girls' team came together so easily, it didn't really matter which had it. Zoroark, the one that I believe name is Rook, one of the 7 sages from Team Plasma, he gives you a Zorua. You can evolve into Zoroark. Shiny Garchomp, in Black and White 2, in like I believe it's the White Tree and the Black Tower, depending on the game. After you complete the entire Trainer Gauntlet and you fight Alder's son Benga, I believe his name is. After you beat him, he will give you a gift, either shiny Gibble or shiny Dratini. So why not have him? You make use of that and have a shiny Garchomp. I'm actually kind of glad we didn't have a graphic for shiny Garchomp, because shiny Garchomp isn't a very good shiny. And then Imbor. So Rosa, we have the Braviary, similar to Nate's Mandibuzz. Crustle, there's a point where in order to get through a cave, you have to fight a Crustle. I'm not really sure why, but that's similar to Snorlax and Kecleon before it. Sawsbuck in the Weather Institute, there's a guy that gives you a Deerling. I kind of considered switching Sawsbuck and Jellicent here, but like I said, because I didn't have the graphic for female Jellicent, and also I just feel like Sawsbuck, I think it fits her fine enough, even though she has two grass types. I don't really think it matters that much. Shiny Haxorus, after you complete the entire Unova Pokedex, not the National Pokedex, which is what I originally thought it was, only the Unova Pokedex, you can then hop on a plane to, I believe, I don't remember the name of the place, but there's a place where you can then catch a static shiny Haxorus. So I think she should have access to that along with the shiny Dragonite, because I think that's a lot of fun. And that's also part of the reason why I gave him Gigalith, because I just feel like in order to kind of compensate for her having 2 very strong, beefy dragons, he should have a very powerful Pokemon in Gigalith, and then superior for her as well. Callum, every I know I've gone on record before on these on this channel before about how much I do not like Generation 6. And even making these teams, it was so boring because their teams just fell together so easily. Like for both male and female, four of their Pokemon were already basically made for me, and then two more were just pretty easily put together. And I don't know, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. We'll get to that in just a second, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh just because I don't like those games, but just especially with just how good these teams are, it doesn't really feel like they deserve them, but whatever. On the actual team, we got the Mega Lucario that Karina gives you, the static Snorlax, because just this game just has to have every homage to Gen 1 possible. Tyrantrum, one of the fossils. Venusaur, you get a second starter Pokemon, again, having to be a Gen 1 starter. Yveltal, you are forced to catch the box legend, and his starter Greninja. And then for Serena, a person gives you a Lapras around the time you get served, so you can use it. Again, very similar to Generation 1. Rotom, it was either that or Bayonet for a similar reason, where there is one building, I can't remember the name of the building, but there's a building where on certain days, certain Pokemon can be found in the trash cans lying around. And on one of the days, you can find Rotom in their various forms. So I thought it'd be fun if she had a Rotom. And then to parallel Caleb, we have Aurorus, Blastoise, Xerneas, Delphox. It was a little awkward maybe having his Mega be Lucario and not the Venusaur, but I mean, you get that Lucario as a Mega Lucario, showcasing the Mega evolution as a concept. So it should definitely be Mega Lucario as his Mega. I just wish there was another possible option for Megas for Serena. Like I know it's possible to get old Amber from, like, I'm pretty sure from like Rock Smashing Rock or like something in the post game, but it's not something you would just get from standard play. So Mega Blastoise, I think, works here. And once again, I think both these teams are absolutely incredible. They both have some of the highest base stat total souls of the entire of this entire list. But I don't know. I just don't feel like Caleb specifically deserves one this good, this imposing. But whatever. Gen 6 reign over. Come on to Elio. Again, never would have even thought about what his name could possibly be. Like, give me 1 million guesses. I would never come up with Elio, whatever it is. So yeah, there's that. And I actually really like his Ultra Sun and Moon design. Not that I dislike his Sun and Moon design, but I think this one has a lot more personality to it. So we have the Aerodactyl that you were given in Seafolk Village. There's a fun little thing you can do in one of the towns. I can't remember exactly where they're like you sit in a little presentation where it's a bunch of kids essentially doing a PSA presentation of like what to do if you see a Beware, and so a couple of kids like dressed up as a Beware, and then at some point during that a Beware just shows up and you have to fight it. So that's why you have the Beware there. So Lolly, the Ether Foundation, made a second one, so they give it to you. Zygarde, you get Zygarde from the two Dexio and whatever her name is. Uh, so there's that, and then Solgaleo again. Like I mentioned before, I'm fudging this a little bit because I don't think in the main story, I don't believe you're forced to catch Solgaleo in Ultra Sun and Moon. I think that is a post game thing. Like you go back to the route where you first meet Tapu Koko and like the bridge is fixed, and then you can go across and um, Lily is over there, and like you can then catch Solgaleo or something like that. But I feel personally like it makes sense that he he would have Solgaleo regardless. You spend so much time traveling with somebody that has um, Cosmog, and then like it imprints on you. It just feels right for him to have one. And then Decidueye. Alternatively, I could have also had a Porygon Z somewhere on this list, but um, I don't know. For some reason, Aerodactyl to me just felt better here. Now for Celine, again, shot in the dark, never would have come up with her name. And something I thought would be very fun is the first three here, Eradicate, Togedemaru, and Komao. Those three are specifically the totem forms, where if you collect enough stickers and give them to Samson Oak, he will give you the totem Pokemon that you fought throughout the game. And these three are some of the totems I can give you that are specifically Ultra Moon exclusives. I'm pretty sure instead of Eradicate, it would be Gumshoes. Instead of Togemaru, it would have been Vikavolt. Instead of Como, it would have been Ribombee. So I think it'd be fun if, she had those totem Pokemon. And then Naganadel, the Ultra Space people, they give you a Poipole after you deal with the Necrozma situation. Lunala, for the same reason he had Solgaleo, and then Primarina. Next up, we have Chase, going back to Generation 1. Yeah, we have Hitmonchan. The Fighting Dojo is still accessible, so you can get one of those two. Snorlax, for the same reason that Red had one. Aerodactyl, once again, the old Amber. Persian. In Let's Go Pikachu, there is a NPC that if you show him 5 Growlithe, he'll give you a Persian that you can ride, and then vice versa in Let's Go Eevee, it's 5 Meowth, and it'll give you an Arcanine. I feel like Arcanine is the much better Pokemon between the two, but whatever. It's a gift Pokemon that, I think should go here. It's also kind of fun him having a Pikachu and a Persian. Just, I don't know, I like that parallel. And then in Let's Go Pikachu, you can trade for a Alolan Sandslash. And in Let's Go Eevee, you can trade for Alolan Ninetales. So he has Sandslash and then the starter Pikachu. Elaine, Hitmonlee, I decided to just, switch them because in Generation 1, I had Red having Hitmonlee and Leaf having Hitmonchan. I decided to switch them this time. It doesn't really matter who has who, but I thought that'd be interesting enough to switch this time. Electrodes, the power plant. There are several electrodes you can do as static encounters. Lapras, still giving up the Silphco, then Arcanine and Ninetales, as previously mentioned, and the starter Eevee. Victor, the one from Galar, we have Graplocked, who I know static encounters aren't there. It's a little different from Let's Go Pikachu onwards, considering every Pokemon can just be out there walking around, so it's not exactly the same. But there, once you get to that ice route, once you have access to surf or the surfing ride option, whatever it's called, there is a Graplock that when I first got to that route, it just started chasing me down, and I had to try to run from it. And I'm pretty sure that Graplock, even after you catch it, can still be there. So or maybe not. It's essentially always there. And I think there's actually a couple of different places on that route where there can be Graplock specifically in those places that are there to impede you. So I feel like that is kind of in a similar vein as the Kecleon or the Snorlax. Dracovish, one of the fossils, and specifically the two that are easier to find in Sword, I'm pretty sure. Duraludon, a trade Pokemon. You could also potentially give him Silvally. There's another Silvally that the Microcosmos made. They got the blueprint from the Aether Foundation, I guess, and they made one. But once again, I'm prioritizing Gen 8 Pokemon here, so he'll have Duraludon. Toxtricity, specifically the amped form that is Gigantamaxed, you get a Toxel from a lady in the daycare, and uh, I wanted to be amped. It doesn't. I mean, it really depends on the nature that it has. So I just picked amped, and then I wanted both Victor and whatever the lady's name, Gloria, wanted them both to have a Gigantamax form that was not the starter. Um, they could both have starter, but once you see her team, it will make more sense why he has Toxtricity. Plus, since I'm giving him Eternatus and they're like kind of linked story wise, I thought it would be kind of fun if his Gigantamax was Toxtricity. And you'll notice that I didn't give him Zacian. And that's because in the main story of Sword and Shield, you're actually not required to catch the version's dog. If you beat Leon and then stop playing, Eternatus is the first and only legendary Pokemon that you have access to. There is a whole like little uh post game story thing that it does end in you and your rival catching Zacian and Zamazenta, but in order to facilitate the team that I gave Gloria, and also now just to kind of change things up a bit, I gave him Eternatus, and then also Rillaboom. Now for Gloria, for both Gen 8 and 9, I thought it would be fun if one of them essentially had a team that represented them mainlining the story, and then the other one had a team that made it seem like essentially they focused solely on the DLC. So obviously Victor focused on the main story, beating Leon, whereas Gloria did a little bit of more adventuring in the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. So starting off with the Galarian Slowbro, once you get to I believe it's the Modestoke train station, there's a Galarian Slowpoke there that you once you either beat or capture it, you then get access to the Isle of Armor. I am still keeping Arctozolt. She still, had to play at least some in the main stories, and I like the parallel of her having the other two fossil parts. Alolan Dugtrio in the Isle of Armor, there's a side quest where once you pick up 100, is 150, 151, once you find 150 or 151 Alolan Diglett, you go back to the guy who tasked you with finding them, and then he'll give you other prize Pokemon as well, but the last prize is Alolan Dugtrio. So she spent the entire time doing that. So I like to headcanon, she extensively explored the DLC, so she has Alolan Dugtrio. Urshifu rapid form. It could be rapid or the other one. It doesn't really matter. Again, ideally, I guess she wouldn't have rapid form and Inteleon, but you can either say she either has the dark one in Inteleon, or if it is a big issue, she can also have Cinderace. It doesn't really matter, but I don't know. I personally just like aesthetically, I think this just works for me personally. But this is the reason why I wanted Victor to have Toxtricity be his Gigantamax form, because it just makes so much sense for her Gigantamax one to be Urshifu. And she also has Calyrex Shadow Rider. She explored the Crown Tundra as well, and by the end of that, you have Calyrex and then Inteleon. And next up, we have Ray, the male protagonist from Legends Arceus. Starting off with the shiny Rapidash, there is a little quest where you're told that there is a like off-colored Ponyta running around the first area. You go find it, and it is a shiny Ponyta. That feels like a canon experience for everyone to find that shiny Rapidash or shiny Ponyta that can evolve into a Rapidash. Hisuian Zoroark and Overquill, both of those are there's story missions where you essentially have to fight these enraged uh, Apex Pokemon, and after you do have the chance to catch them, so that's what both of those are. Spiritomb, kind of similar to the Diglett, where you all over the entire region. There's I guess it has to be 108 little like spirit wisp things, and if you collect all of them and bring them to a place, then you can get a Spiritomb. I decided that Ray would go the Dialga route, so he has Dialga Origin Form, and then Hisuian Samurai. And for Akari, she has Alolan Ninetales. For some reason, there is a trainer that after you do a side quest for them, they'll give you an Alolan Vulpix. I don't know why, but that's what happens. Vespiquen and Hisuian Gudra, similar to the Zoroark and Overquill from the other one. They're enraged Apex Pokemon that you can fight and capture. Infernape, there's a little side quest where you have to like go see like you go to this one tree and like you headbutt it and a Chimchar falls out. So I feel like that is fair game for her to have this Infernape. Like ideally, she wouldn't have two fire starters, but there's a 2/3 chance that she would have a starter that is the same type as this Infernape, and I don't feel like Samurott fits her personally. So, like, either it would be Hisuian Typhlosion, who's obviously a fire type, or it would be Hisuian Decidueye, who's a fighting type. So, I went personally with Typhlosion and Infernape. I think that's fine. And then she went with Palkia. Lastly, Generation 9. This is the one and only time that I'm saying that the female protagonist is the most canon protagonist. This is mostly just because I really like aesthetically, I like Nimona being from Naranja Academy. I just like her in the orange a lot better. That's kind of a silly reason to specifically do that, but I don't know. I just feel like Juliana, just personally, I feel like just the way she is presented here just would mesh a lot better with the characters in the main story, as opposed to the other guy. I think his name is Florian, who we'll get to him in just a second, but I don't really like his design at all. Whereas I like her design at least a little more. So Juliana, I'm making her team as if she mainlined the main story. She has Goldingo. You can go around the entire region, fighting a bunch of. Oh no, I'm just blanking on his name. Gimmighoul. After you collect 999 Gimmighoul coin parts, whatever they're called, you can then use them to evolve one, and every single one is a different static encounter. So it makes perfect sense that she would have a Goldingo. Berserker, there is at least one school side quest thing where after you complete so many classes and lessons, once you essentially pass that class, the teacher will give you a Galarian Meowth. And it's actually very fun because that teacher then, like in his battle, I believe he'll have a regular Persian and a Berserker. At least he'll have at least a regular Persian, which I think is fun. Uh, we also have the Koraidon, kind of similar to the Volcarona from before. You could actually theoretically have two Koraidon on this team. One is not a forced capture, but there are two available. Actually, very similar to Zygarde on Elio's team. I forgot to mention you. I think you're technically given at least potential access to it, two, if not more than two Zygarde, depending on how many Zygarde cells you pick up. But 10% is the one that you're actually given, so that's the most canon one you would have. But anyway, she's just having the one that you ride around on, actually, build the connection with. For both Cloth and Great Tusk, they're after you beat them in their Titan form, once you come back to the area, there's a little static. There's a little static for all the Titans. The Pokemon is there. Um, I think they're a little bigger. Like they look a little bigger than a Cloth or whatever normally would be, but they're not. Obviously not as big as they normally are. Um, but you can still then go back and capture any of the Titans. And I figured Cloth being the first Titan you fight, it makes perfect sense for that to be. It just feels the most special one that you would come back and and capture. And then Great Tusk, I wanted to have at least one Paradox Pokemon somewhere on both of their teams, and then Meowscarada. I'm not married to Meowscarada. She could also have Skeledirge, but definitely not Quaquaval because I'm giving that to the guy. But either one of those, maybe actually Skeledirge will work a little better considering Koraidon's ability sets up the sun, but I'm not really married to it. Also, um, I could easily see um, I could easily see Nimona having either Masker. I could easily see her having Skeledirge. So Meowscarada, I think, works here. I originally in my like rivals video, I said that her Nimona's Meowscarada team was most canon, but that would mean that Juliana would have to have Quaquaval, and I don't really want that. So we'll say this makes the most sense. Now for Florian, just again, just I don't know, his design just irks me. He looks bored, nervous. It's like he doesn't want to be here. Whereas Juliana, she looks excited to go on this journey. He does not. So yeah, that's why I'm saying that she is the more canon, the more canon uh, protagonist. But Florian does get to go on a grand adventure in the DLC, which means that his canon team that I'm giving him is absolutely stacked, and I believe might actually be the highest base stat total of the entire game because he'll have access to the Ursaluna Blood Moon that the I can't remember her name. Perrin, I think her name Perrin. She has two different side quests you can do, and then you can get a Pokemon from them. Um, I believe after you collect every Pokemon in the Teal Mask Pokedex, you can then go on a little side quest to find an Ursaluna Blood Moon. And then there's some other side quest you can do where she'll give you a Hisuian Growlithe, which can then evolve into Hisuian Arcanine. And again, both of them, I believe, has 555 base stat total or something. I know Ursaluna has 555. I'm pretty sure Arcanine also does. So that's already ridiculously high. Miraidon, again, the Miraidon that he was given at the beginning of the game. And he should probably also have Ogre Pond, something that's literally forced onto you, despite, despite Kiki's chagrin. And then similar with Terapagos, he also tried to catch it, but you're actually forced to catch it. Alternatively to either Blood Moon Ursaluna or Hisuian Arcanine, I could have given him Iron Crown or Iron Boulder because I believe Perrin in the Blueberry Academy there's another like there's a quest she either her or somebody puts you on that ends with you catching uh the Paradox Terrakion and Cobalion, but his team is already so good. It didn't need those. So yeah, we ended on a pretty. Even though, like I said, with the Gen 6 people, I don't necessarily think he deserves a team this good, but all the pieces just came together to make his team just absolutely incredible. So with all that, thanks for watching. If there's anything that you think I missed, please let me know. If there's anything you disagree with, is there anything you would switch around? Please let me know. I'd love to have a discussion going. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing this video. Like I said, just for like my love for the Trainer Red fight at the end of the Gen 2 game. Just really, I've been kind of thinking about this concept for pretty much years now. And I'm glad I finally was able to put it all together and present it to you guys. So, like I said, if you have any comments or questions about anything on here, you feel like I missed anything big or sort of switched around stuff, or if you disagree with what I consider to be the canon protagonist at any point, please let me know. I'd like to have a discussion down below. And yeah, with all that, I will see you all next time.